Hello and welcome to this episode of the P Smash Podcast. Today we're going to have a great episode for you. First, we're going to talk about the divisional round and just recapping it and putting a bow on it before we move to the championship round and preview that round. Then we're going to talk about some NBA news that is happening. And then finally, we're going to talk about Philip Rivers retiring, as well as possibly Drew Brees retiring, and my thoughts on both. But first, let's go to the beginning and talk about the divisional round. So, as I said before, the divisional round of the playoffs ended this past week, and I just want to put a bow on it. So, I want to start with our first game of the weekend, which was the Rams and the Packers. Now, this game, on surface, seemed a lot more competitive. Before the matchup, it seemed like it was going to be a lot more competitive than if you actually took a deep dive into, what was going to happen and the statistics and everything and all the storylines behind. This seemed a lot more competitive on the surface than what it actually should have seemed at the beginning of this game. If you really took a deep dive into everything that was happening, there was no way the Rams were going to win this game. And absolutely no way. Yes, that defense was the best defense in the NFL this year. They had two of the top 5 defensive players in the NFL right now in Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. But that does not change the fact that that offense is bad. And I don't mean bad like in, like the Eagles bad. I mean like worst offense in the league bad. I mean Eagles with Carson Wentz bad, not Eagles with Jalen Hurts bad. So they really had no shot. The Rams really had no shot. They put up a good fight for what they could do, but you're going against a team that is already hot in the Green Bay Packers. And during that game, the Green Bay Packers looked like the best team in the NFL. They were getting their way with the best defense in the NFL that is entering into the playoffs. And it just seemed like it was Swiss cheese. It seemed like they were playing a middle-of-the-road defense at best. So, not only that, but the Green Bay defense also looked extremely good. It looked better than the Rams. Yes, that has to do in part because of competition. If you're telling me I'm going to go against one of the worst offenses and I'm a defense, I'm going to have a better game than if I'm going against the best offense in the NFL. So, that's something to take into account. But the fact that the Green Bay defense looked that good in the playoff game, that just means it's going to give them confidence going into the next round. And I think that is going to matter a lot moving forward. Now, moving on, I want to talk about the second game, the game that happened that night in the Bills and the Ravens. Now, if you're a Ravens fan, this isn't quite as bad as it looks. A couple things to note is, one, your defense played really, really well, which is a good sign for next year when everyone's healthy and everyone can play an entire season together. 2, you need a wide receiver in the draft because you could just tell nothing was getting open in the passing game. So once you draft a wide receiver to be your true number 1, then Marquise Brown and Willie Snead, those are really good 2 and 3 wide receivers, and they'll have a lot more opportunities to get open, and I think that will allow your offense to be even more explosive and dynamic. 3, no one is going to be able to stop your running game as well as the Bills stopped your running game this game, ever again. Not only being able to score 3 points, really it should have been 9, but scoring 3 points, that's tough, and I doubt that's ever going to happen again. And then 4, Lamar only really made one mistake. Was it a really, really costly mistake? Yes, but it was one mistake. And just like in the game before where Lamar made one mistake. And that's way down from last year where he made 3 or 4 really bad mistakes in the Titans game. And then the year before that where he made even more mistakes in the Chargers game. So I think that over time Lamar has shown improvement, and I think that next year he's going to be even better. Maybe not statistically, but maturity-wise and decision-making-wise. With that said, on the Bills, I wouldn't be as ecstatic about this win as some Bills fans are. You put up 10 points. You put up 10 points on offense. For one of the best offenses in the NFL. And that is not good. And I mean, that's not good. You play it against a defense that hadn't really been able to play together for the entire year. So only being able to put up 10 points kind of scares me when you're going up against a team in the not conference finals, my apologies, in the championship game, who is arguably the best offense when fully healthy that this league has ever seen. So it's really scary that you only put up 10 points. Now, with that said, you guys still got the win, and your defense looked really, really good. So if your defense can hold that up, you will have a chance to win. But if your offense plays like they did again, you have no chance of winning. So if I was a Bills fan, I'd be a little more sober about this win than what you guys are, and I'd be a little more realistic about your expectations for this next game. Now moving on to the third game, we have the Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this, from a Browns perspective, should not be a bad loss. You lost to a better team. That's just a fact. It's alright. You don't have to admit it to yourself now, Browns fans, but that's just the truth. And you guys had a great season. You guys got to the divisional round of the playoffs. You guys have been so bad for so long that that's an achievement in and of itself. Your goal every year should be to make the Super Bowl. That is true. But progression is as equally important, if not more important, than reaching your goal. Because if you set your goal that high but you never progress, then you can't get to that goal. But it's good that you guys are progressing. Baker's young and he looks good. Nick Chubb is improving every year. Then you have wideouts like Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones and T. Higgins. Right? That's who, I believe it is T. Higgins. And you have a trade asset, in my opinion, in Odell. Because I don't think Odell fits with that team. I think Odell needs to go to a team with a quarterback that has a more firm position within the organization. Which I think Odell to the Ravens is a really good thing. But that's a topic for another episode. But right now, just keeping it short, you should be really happy and really optimistic about your future, Browns. Now, on the other side, Kansas City, that game was going to get out of hand a few times. That game would have gotten out of hand if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes' injury. So I wouldn't worry too much about the final score. But, dang. I don't even remember this man's name. That backup quarterback for Kansas City, that run was amazing. I watched that and my jaw dropped because you're like, this backup quarterback, he doesn't look especially mobile. Like, he looked kind of mobile, but he didn't look like, super mobile. So I was like, there's no way that he's going to be able to pick this up when I see him start running. And then I see him just dive. And that was an amazing play. That was one of the best plays of the week, if not the best play of the week. And then on 4th and 1, to go for it and to have the confidence to put it in your backup quarterback's hand, now that is astounding. But not only that, but just after the game, Patrick Mahomes and the backup quarterback talking together and coming up with the Anything is Possible t-shirt collection and merchandise for the Patrick Mahomes Foundation so they could raise money off the opportunity is amazing. And I said it's Anything is Possible because I think his name is Chad Henne, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is Chad Henne. So that's just funny. Anything is possible instead of anything. That's funny. I'm just kind of a fan of puns, so that's just me. I think it's pretty damn funny. But I think that not only to come in and be the hero of that game, but to be able to have the wherewithal to capture the moment is a pretty amazing feat by both Patrick Mahomes and Chad Henne. And I think that entire game was just magical to watch. But other than that, I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to play this weekend. There hasn't been any reports really saying to the contrary. It looks like he's going to play. I don't think there's really much controversy on that. And even if he doesn't, there is definitely a chance Chad Henne can still win that game for you, because he has, in my opinion, what felt like that it factor. Like what Taylor Heineke had in the wild card round, where you could feel that, like, his energy, he felt like a starting quarterback, or he felt like someone who could lead his team. Like Nick Foles had when they went on that Super Bowl run. Like, there are certain quarterbacks that you just feel are backups. Like with, I forget the fourth string quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens name. But that guy felt like a backup quarterback. You could just feel his energy, and he felt like a backup quarterback. But Chad Henne, he really felt like a starter and had that like type of I can help you win this game energy. And I think that's very good. Anyway, now moving on to the last game, which was the Tampa Bay New Orleans game. Now this was a sad game to watch, because you could tell there was no way Drew Brees was 100% during that game. You could tell just by the way he was throwing the ball, he did not feel good. And maybe it was the rib injury, maybe it's that his arm's sore, maybe that he's just getting too old. Whatever the case is, it made that game so sad to watch. And then, as he's walking out the field, you can see him looking back. And it just looked like that was it for him, which is very sad, because he's one of my favorite players of all time. He's probably top 5, I would say, around top 5. But so it was just sad to see that whole affair take place, because I'll get into this a little more later, but I think this is going to be his last game playing, and that's just a sad sight to see. But on the flip side, Tom Brady played a mistake-free game, which was the main thing for him against the Saints, because in the past 2 matchups, the thing he had the most trouble with was mistakes. If he hadn't made those mistakes in the past 2 games, those games would have been competitive, or they would have won that game. So I think that because Tom Brady didn't make mistakes, I think this is one of his better games. I don't think he necessarily had the greatest game, as some people were claiming, like top 5. I heard Colin Cowherd be like, this is one of his top 5 top performances of all time. I'm like, dude, no. Bruh. That's cap. But it was a good performance by Tom Brady. It was solid. It was what you would hope a veteran quarterback who still has their arm strength and has everything and has most of what they had in the tank would do. Throw the ball deep a couple of times to where only the receivers could get it, and then just manage the rest of the game, dink and dunk it, and make sure that you run out the clock, because the defense was able to create turnovers, and you capitalized on those turnovers, and you were able to just manage the game from there. But I really want to take a shout out to that rookie wide receiver that Tom Brady threw that pass to, because yes, that pass is where it needed to be. That's a hard catch. That's a really hard catch, especially in that situation on 3rd and I think it was 14, to make a back shoulder catch, like stretched out, stopping your momentum. That's an insane catch to make. Like, that is a really insane catch to make, especially for a rookie. And if you watch that game, you can see Tony Romo be like, that is one of the greatest catches I've ever seen. Because of the degree of difficulty it takes to stop your momentum and twist your body like that. So, that's a great job by that receiver. Like, that is what you need to do to win football games, to be an X factor. And then Scotty Miller able to get the space in the zone, to get the ball dropped in him like a rainbow, like it was a laundry basket. And Tom Brady just dropped it in there and he caught it. So I think that was just great performance by those 2 wide receivers. A good performance overall. Not the best performance by the Bucs, but good performance overall. And I think they will have a chance next week. Now, moving on to previewing next week's games, I think that really the 2 games are both going to be pretty competitive games. I think that I want to start with the AFC first, because there are two different scenarios. The one I think will happen and the one that might happen, just in case. So first, it's Patrick Mahomes plays. If Patrick Mahomes plays, I think it's going to be a close game. As I said before, I think this is going to be a higher scoring game than what was the Bills had last week and the Chiefs had last week. I think this is going to be a mid-30s game. I'd be going probably like 31, 34, 34, 37. Somewhere in that range. But overall, I think the Chiefs will win, and I think they'll win by 3 to 6 points. But I think it's going to be a really close game. It's going to be really entertaining to watch. And I think it really is going to come down to two things. Which quarterback ends up playing better? Because Mahomes still has that turf toe. People forget that Patrick Mahomes still has that turf toe. So that could affect him going forward. So there's Patrick Mahomes' turf toe, and Josh Allen has been playing like an MVP candidate for the past like 10 weeks. And then on the other side, can the Bills get their running game going? Because if the Bills can get their running game going and they can get Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, if Zach Moss plays this week, to combine for 150 yards, 175 yards, and that's going to open the passing lanes up so much more for the Bills, and it's going to make them be able to play the type of offense they really want to play. And then on the flip side, can Kansas City get the running game going? Because if Le'Veon Bell and Damian Williams can get going, that is going to be a disgusting offense. It's going to be an unstoppable offense. Because you get Le'Veon Bell going, there's no stopping him. And then Damian Williams is a playoff running back, as we saw. He's Super Bowl running back. If that running game gets going, it's a GG. I'm just going to say, if they run for over 150 yards, I don't see a way the Bills can win unless they also run for over 150 yards. Then it kind of evens the playing field out. So it's really going to come down to the running game and which group of offensive talent, specifically the quarterback, plays better. Because I don't think either defense is going to be able to offer too much resistance. Now, on the flip side, talking about the Green Bay-Tampa game, I think this is also going to be relatively high scoring. I'm going to say low 30s and high 20s. I'm going to be like 28, 31, 31, 34, somewhere around that range. And I think that the Packers are going to win by one possession, whether that's 3-1, 6 points. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I think it will be a one possession lead by the Green Bay Packers. Now, this game for me comes down to a couple things. One, which running game is better? Now, it's more important in this game than the game before because both those teams rely on the running game at least a little bit to get their offense going. So if you're telling me that the Packers run for 50 yards and Tampa runs for 150, I would most likely say Tampa wins that game. Because running the ball is really, really important to both those offenses. If they get that run game going, they can get that play-action game going. If they get the play-action game going, it's a GG for those defenses. Now, on the other hand, I think this isn't going to be necessarily which quarterback plays better, but which quarterback manages the game better. Because I don't see Tom Brady being able to outplay Aaron Rodgers. I just don't think Tom Brady is good enough anymore to do that. Aaron Rodgers was the best quarterback in the league this year. So, and I don't see Tom Brady being able to match that. But I could see Tom Brady being able to game manage, be able to play like a top 5 quarterback, and be able to game manage better than Aaron Rodgers game manages. Being able to make sure he makes the correct passes at the right time. Maybe not making the passes that had the best benefit, but making the passes that kept the drive moving. That was the heady play to make, not the talented play to make. And I think that if Tom Brady is able to outthink Aaron Rodgers, then the Bucs will have a chance at this game. Because Tom Brady is, in my opinion, the ultimate game manager. Game managers are not bad. And Tom Brady does have an arm and has arm talent, but he is the ultimate game manager. He's able to manage almost any game from any situation if he's up in the fourth quarter. And I think if he's able to outmanage Aaron Rodgers, especially if this game's close at the end, then it's going to give the Bucs a really good chance to succeed. And I think the path to victory is going to be for Tom Brady to manage the game correctly for the Bucs. And then on the other side, for the Packers, they need Aaron Rodgers to be able to play like his MVP form for all 4 quarters, play at his highest level, and be able to still get the running game involved at the same time. If they're able to do that, then the Packers are going to be able to confuse the Bucs defense or take advantage of the amount of pressure they send, since Todd Bowles loves to blitz. So I think the real keys for this game is which running game gets going better, which quarterback manages the game better, and can Aaron Rodgers play at his peak MVP form for 4 quarters while still getting the running game involved. Depending on how you answer those questions, I think you'll get the answer to the game. Now moving on to some NBA news. First, I wanted to talk about the Nuggets. As I talked about before, the Nuggets were struggling, but Nikola Jokic was putting up MVP numbers. Now Nikola Jokic is putting up MVP numbers, and the Nuggets are starting to claw their way back into contention. They're 7-7 right now, which is 9th seed, but again, it's very early in the season, so it's like 3 games back from the 1 seed. So they're getting closer and closer, and they're clawing their way back up into contention. So I think that's really good, and I think you're going to continue to see that climb. Now, on the other hand, I want to talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder for a second, who've been able to stay around 500 for the first month of the season, which is really impressive considering their roster. And that shows a couple of things. One, the culture there is very good. The culture that Billy Donovan and Chris Paul were able to build last year is still there. 2, the coaching there is still really good. Even after Billy Donovan and the OKC organization parted ways, which that's a really good sign for the OKC head coach. It's Mark. I cannot say his last name for the life of me. I'll try just for you all, because I bet you all still would like to see me try to epically mispronounce this man's name, but I'm going to try my best. It's Mark Dejaguinulet. I probably butchered this man's name, and I apologize. If someone can tell me either in the comment section, or by contacting me through my blog, I would love to know how to pronounce this man's name, because I really cannot. But regardless, I think it's really, really, really impressive that the OKC Thunder, with the roster they have, has been able to stay competitive and stay around 500. That's a really impressive feat that they have all achieved together, and I think that shows the chemistry they have together. And there's so many bright spots. Lou Dort is still his same self defensively, and he's starting to hit threes. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is showing that he can be an all-star caliber level talent and a great number 2 option, and possibly in the future number 1 option for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then finally, all their support pieces are playing the way they should, and their rookies are getting time to develop within the game. I think Poku is not doing the best right now, but he just needs to get some weight on him, and I think he'll be good to play later on in the season or next season when he actually gets the weight he needs to play in the NBA. Now, next, I wanted to talk about the Golden State Warriors and their success. Them beating the Lakers kind of showed that they're back. And I kind of touched on this a little last episode, but I just want to touch on it again about the difference Draymond Green makes to that team, Because when you watch the game, whenever he's on the court, you can just tell there's a different energy to that team. You can tell he's a leader in that locker room, and he's a leader on the court, and he's someone that organization trusts to show other people and to lead that team. I think that's really way undervalued in people in the NBA this time, in this era. It's all about talent and not that much about leadership. There's reasons why extremely talented people like Kat, like D'Lo, aren't able to succeed without leaders on the team. It's because they need some sort of direction to go. And if you're not getting a leadership role on the court or by your coach, it's really hard to succeed if you're not driving that leadership role yourself. If you look at all of the championship teams over the past, I don't even know how many years. You can look back, I think, all the way down the line. I'm thinking about it right now. I don't think there's a single team in modern NBA history since the merger that didn't have a great leader on that team. You had Larry, you had Magic, you had Kareem, you had Michael Jordan, you had Hakeem Olajuwon, you had Shaq, you had Kobe, you had Kevin Garnett, you had Paul Pierce, you had LeBron, you had Tim Duncan, I just forgot his name. Tony Parker, there we go. Manu Ginobili, Greg Popovich, you had D Wade, you had Eric Spoelstra, you had, I'm trying to think, there we go, you have Steph Curry, but most important, more notably, Draymond Green. You had, again, LeBron. And then you had Kawhi, who was a leader on that team. Just every year, if you go down the line, every single championship level team had a leader. And that leader is very important. Even if it's not your best player, just to have that player on the court that is able to tell you exactly where you need to go and to bring the energy every night is such an important part, an underrated part of every single championship level team. Because if you don't have that guy that's able to bring everything together, then it's going to be really hard to make all the individual pieces fit come playoff time, come crunch time. Now, moving on to James Harden and Kevin Durant. When I recorded my last podcast, they hadn't played a game together. Now they had played a few, and damn, do they look good. Now Kyrie and KD are going to play with Harden for the first time tonight, I believe. And I think that game is also going to be really good, because I think they may let Kyrie just cook. Because this is the second time he's been back to Cleveland since he left. So I think they might just let him cook and let him just sauce them up. So I hope that is what happens, because I would like to see that happen. But even if it doesn't happen, it's going to be really interesting to watch that team play. But really just focusing in on Harden for a second, do you think it's possible he had something funky going on with his weight? That maybe that picture was either photoshopped or he was wearing something, because the amount of weight he lost within the span of him getting traded is obscene, it looks like. Because it looks like he was fat before his trade, and then after the trade, man is skinny and in shape and ready to go right off rip. So there's something fishy going on there. I'm just saying. There's something not entirely great going on there. Something that looks like may have been a little bit fabricated. So that's just my opinion. It looks like there's something fishy going on there. But if you really look at the pictures, you should. And then just make your own judgments about what happened. Now finally, to wrap things up, I wanted to talk about Phillip Rivers retiring and maybe Drew Brees retiring. For Phillip Rivers, it was time. I think it was good he went out on a note of the playoffs. It showed he still had some left in the tank. It was good he went off on a high note getting into the playoffs. On the other hand, I think that it's kind of sad he was never really in contention for anything. Because he was in for contention for anything, it would push him closer to being in the Hall of Fame. But I think with the resume he has now, I think he's going to be one of those great quarterbacks that never gets fully recognized. I think he's going to fall into the realm of the Donovan McNabbs and the Michael Vicks, where they were talented and they did good things, but they just never quite made it into the Hall of Fame status. And I think that's going to be really sad for me to watch, but I get it, because there are definitely players, non-quarterbacks, that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame that are retired, that are not him, that deserve it way more. So even though it's going to be sad for me to see that unfold, I understand, and I don't think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, moving on to Drew Brees' possible retirement. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but just to go more in depth. It was really touching to see him after the game talk with Tom Brady, then throw the ball around. Tom Brady throw a touchdown pass to Drew Brees' kids. It really felt like it's his last game. And apparently, if you listen closely, Drew Brees tells Jameis Winston, "This is your team now." So I think this is probably his last season. I think if he does come back to the Saints, it's going to be in a coaching role. But I think he does give himself a couple years off, takes that broadcasting gig he had lined up, and then after a few years out of the, how do I put this, out of the analytical side of football, out of the field side of football, maybe he tries to rejoin it in some capacity, whether that's organizational. That's the organizational side of football. Maybe he tries to join back in as a form of an assistant coach, or maybe as a form of, I don't know, maybe he's a GM or someone in the front office. I think that could also be really good. So overall, I'm really happy that both those people are either contemplating retirement or ended on the note they did before they went into retirement, and I wish them both the best of luck in their future careers if that is what ends up happening. Phillip Rivers with his high school coaching career, and then Drew Brees with his sports broadcasting career. That's all I have for this episode of the PD Smash Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. If you want to contact me and you're listening to this on YouTube, you can either comment down below, or you can go to my blog in the link below in the description, where I have weekly articles that I post as well. And in addition to that, you can go to the contact page, which has my phone number and email, and you can text or email me to come talk about sports, because that's what I like to do, as evident by this 30-minute podcast. Other than that, I don't have anything left. Thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, PD Smash, signing off.